Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of r/neighbors from hell and r/malicious compliance. If you are new to my channel, please feel free to subscribe to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled Parking Spot Revenge. This is probably the most common type of revenge story I have read, being that it is about parking spaces, but just now finding this subreddit made me laugh out loud about my situation. About 2 years ago, I bought a house that is somewhat close to our hospital in town. I don't have a driveway, so I park in front of my house on the street. This is not the greatest situation, but whatever, it is what it is. Well, I quickly found out trying to find a parking spot when coming home was almost impossible, and I would end up having to park 3 blocks away. This is in a small town with free parking everywhere, and my street does not have much traffic. I started talking with all the neighbors and found out none of them were able to park on our street either, and that almost every resident was either having to park a few blocks down or don't own a vehicle themselves. It is the hospital employees that take up all the spots. Normally I would understand and just let it go, but I noticed the staff parking lot was always empty. This is an $8 per month parking lot. There are signs everywhere, so that means I am having to haul a carload of groceries 3 blocks after working all day, all because people are refusing to pay about 25 cents a day to park in their designated area. I eventually got home one day right as someone was leaving the spot directly in front of my home, and I asked them if it was possible to park elsewhere, mostly just out of curiosity, because the cars are always brand new and I cannot understand why someone who drives a new BMW would care about wasting 25 cents on parking. She blew up at me, like as in full-on screaming. My neighbors were all out looking from their doors and windows in shock. That was the end of me being polite. I got the go-ahead from my neighborhood and decided to start messing with any vehicle that was parked there and owned by a hospital employee. Nothing bad. I would just park close by at first and make their exit a pain in the butt. And slowly but surely started to bring somewhat of a fleet to take up the whole street. I'm a part owner of an electrical company in town, and we have a few unused unmarked vans as well as cargo trailers, and I have a couple older personal vehicles as well. It got to the point where I had 5 vans, my truck, car, jeep and 2 cargo trailers lined up on the street, parked extremely poorly. I essentially took up both sides of the entire block until my neighbors would come home, send me a text, and I would let them in while moving one of the vehicles. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 10 or so extra vehicles taking up spots that normally 15 plus cars could fit made a huge difference. The streets around ours got way more blocked, and eventually, one by one, all of those cars I came to loathe started parking in their designated lot. Sometimes I would find a little car sneaked right in between 2 of my vehicles, so I would just go ahead and park my 2 in even closer, making their escape difficult. I made it a bit of a sport coming home from work and then sitting on my lawn, drinking a beer, watching people scream bloody murder, trying to get their cars out of these spots. It took about 2 months of me being the biggest butthole to the hospital employees, I know I'm an ass, until they pretty much all got parking passes. Now all of my vehicles are gone and the street is super quiet, every neighbor has a spot, and I haven't had to walk more than half a block to get home in ages. And guys, speaking of hospitals, I am curious, what is your favorite hospital TV show / series? Let me know in the comments, because currently I am watching the Netflix show The Good Doctor, which is essentially about a genius doctor who has autism, and it is a super interesting show. Highly recommended to everyone interested in hospital TV shows. Anyway, let me know in the comments which ones you like, because I always appreciate good recommendations. And the next one is titled Neighbor Sued Them for Wanting to Add Another Story to Their House, so my grandparents built 2. My grandpa just told me this story and I thought it would fit here. So, to establish some things, the parents of my father own a couple of apartment complexes in this big city in Germany. They, as well as me and my parents, all live in this one house but in different apartments. My father grew up in this house and never moved away. I will probably one day move to another floor. I am 19 years old, but I don't intend to leave this house. My grandpa just told me that in the early 80s it used to be just 1 story high, so really just a very long but super short house, if that makes any sense. I am living on the 3rd floor at the moment, so I asked how this came to pass. What he told me was absolutely hilarious. Okay, now the story. My grandparents wanted to add another floor/story to this very long and flat house. So they obviously contacted the authorities and got all the paperwork done. Everything was fine. Then their neighbor found out about this and got really mad. He owned and still owns some other apartment complexes in this same area and on the same street. He inherited those complexes from his father. My grandparents reminded the neighbor that they had a deal with the neighbor's father that if my grandparents wanted to add more floors to their houses, then the neighbor would comply as long as he could add more floors. All the neighbor had to say to this was, "Yeah, that's what my father said to you, but now he's dead, and I don't want you to add another floor to your house. I will sue you if you do that." To which my grandpa just replied in his sweetest voice, "Alright, do it." The reason why the neighbor could sue us for adding another floor was some weird clause in the German law that existed at that time that stated that a house only could be so high so that the houses next to it would get a specific amount of sun and air. And by the way, ripe stars, I was not aware that houses are considered living organisms that need fresh air and oxygen, but I mean, we learn something new every day. Anyway, so that it wouldn't cast too big of a shadow on the other houses around. My grandpa knew this was BS because a few houses in this area had like 7 floors, so it would not be an inconvenience if our house would stock up. So he went to court. He told me that there literally was a court meeting and a trial on the street in front of our house. He brought a lawyer, his attorney, police officers, and some specialists from the State Department with him. They are the specialists that said our house could actually be 3 floors tall without robbing this neighbor any of his air and sun. With the attorney and the lawyer as witnesses, everything was settled. Then the neighbor came over and had a fit, screaming and huffing the whole time, and demanded that it should only be 1 floor at most. My grandpa said, "Alright, we will do 1 floor and then we're gonna see what we'll do next." They built the floor and then, because that is what the specialist said, built another. Right as when the workers wanted to start to work on the second edit, so in total 3rd floor, the neighbor comes flying. Demands to know why they are doing 1 more than they said they will do. Police were called, the police, already very tired of this whole situation, and especially with the neighbor, told my grandpa to continue building because the concrete was already mixed and ready to use. This house is now 3 floors high. I don't really know what happened to the neighbor because I never met him, but my grandpa said that they are fine now. There was some kind of story that ended up with my grandpa actually building walls around some of the windows of the 3rd floor because the neighbor demanded some BS about fireproof windows. Definitely fireproof if you ask me. And guys, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. Your help is very much appreciated. The next one is titled, "My selfish thief of a sister helps me get revenge on her." My sister and I mostly get along now. Being in college and living 3 states apart plays a large role, but we absolutely hated each other while we were growing up. She was selfish and irresponsible with a quick temper. She would frequently borrow my possessions and then hurl them at me in anger when I wanted them back. She was careless with her own things and would often steal mine to replace what she had destroyed. It wasn't uncommon for her to intentionally break something of mine when I made it clear that I wasn't going to cave in and give it up without a fight. She was a nasty piece of work and was unfortunately encouraged, albeit passively, by our exhausted parents' refusal to come to my aid when I was treated unfairly. My sister had been a problem child since she was in diapers, at home that is. She knew better than to melt down in the presence of other people, and they were just too worn out to care what she did to me unless I was left bloody or bruised. I had long before grown wise to her selfishness and thieving ways by the time I reached high school. I had established good hiding places in my room for some smaller valuable things and was shrewd about keeping these things from her sight and reach. My clothes and shoes were always up for grabs though, and she would even go through my underwear drawer and take what she wanted. My cosmetics and toiletries were not really mine. She had stopped hurling things for the most part as a teenager, but still had her eyes peeled for anything she wanted for her own. Our birthdays are in the same month, and our parents often bought us the same gifts when we were younger so that we wouldn't squabble over who had what. But as I said, she wouldn't take care of her things and would steal mine to replace what she had lost or broken. Living with her was horrible. During my freshman year and her junior year, she signed up to go on a weekend trip to the mountains with the youth group from our church. I had no interest in it and couldn't see why she did. The boys were okay, but the girls were stuck up, and I had witnessed them ignoring my sister when she followed them like a lost puppy. I imagined a trip with the group would be a lonely one for her. Our birthdays were a month or so before the trip, and we had found favor with the birthday fairy. We both received $100 MasterCard or Visa gift cards from our childless aunt and uncle who have no other nieces or nephews to spend money on. Our parents let us pick out our gifts from them. I chose an MP3 player to replace the one I'd had for years that now had a non-working volume control. My new toy was the same model but had twice the memory. I set aside the old one to see if my dad could fix it and use it. My sister chose some SUED boots and gave me strict orders to stay away from them. I remember feeling really angry about that, considering all the things she had taken from me. She took my mom's advice and saved her gift card for the church trip. After mom had dropped my sister off at church to get on a bus for the long drive, she suggested that we go shopping with my gift card. I wanted to, but had some trouble finding it. It was not in the drawer in my vanity where I knew I had put it, and I searched my room for several minutes before it hit me. I just knew. I went straight to my sister's room and opened the tacky rhinestone box on her bookshelf. It was her money box and my gift card was in it. I knew it was mine because one of the groups of numbers was the last 4 digits of my friend's phone number and another group was my birth year. I had noticed this when I first received the card and looked at it. My sister had stolen my gift card from my room and was probably going to pass it off as hers after using hers up. My sister had done a lot of nasty things to me and had taken a lot from me, not just my possessions, but she chipped away at my dignity over the years and left me without any self-confidence. But this insult, stealing my birthday gift right out from under my nose, is what I still consider to be the worst. The icing on the crab cake was that I couldn't tell my parents. They had stopped listening to my complaints and pleas when my sister's everyday bad behavior became too much for them to stand. It was easier to just ignore it. When my mom and I went shopping, I did not bother getting anything that my sister could make use of. I knew she would just take what she wanted. She is taller than me and has an inseam at least 3 inches longer, so I bought some jeans that I liked and knew would be too short for her. I also treated myself to a couple of bras. Any bras that would fit me would overwhelm her wee attributes. I love makeup but didn't bother going to the mall counters because my sister frequently raided my makeup bag and used my stuff, even the germy things like mascara. I wanted to get things that would be mine and only mine. Now here is where the sun comes out. She was in a right snit when my parents and I picked her up at church the following week. She was still flaming mad about opening her bag when she got to the hotel and finding out that the shampoo she had packed, my shampoo by the way, had a loose cap and had spilled all over her clothes and some other things. She accused me of going into her bag and fiddling with the bottle so it would leak. I didn't go into her bag, but I did loosen the cap on all my hair care and body wash bottles before she left and then tightened them again after she had gone. I knew she had taken some of my stuff with her and I was getting the sticky results I had wanted. I denied it, of course. Hotel staff had to take her clothes down to the laundry room and throw them in the washer. This was mortifying to her. She sobbed and screamed at me for what I had done. Then she regained her composure long enough to tell me that I wasn't nearly as clever as I thought I was. I will never forget the self-satisfied smirk on her face as she told me that she had used my gift card to buy t-shirts and snacks for her friends, and threw away my new shampoo-coated MP3 player as soon as she took it from her bag. Mom, confused, piped up before I could with the news that I had used up every cent of my gift card at the mall and that I had been using my new MP3 player all weekend. My sister snapped back at her that it was my old player I'd been using, and I took great delight in setting her straight. She had a total meltdown when she realized she had cost herself a $100 shopping spree and had not actually destroyed my property. Mom and Dad for once were having none of it and shut her down pretty quickly when she tearfully demanded I hand over my MP3 player as a consolation prize. She was still a jerk after that, but was never as bad as after the wind was knocked from her sails. Mom and Dad started also sticking up for me more. That is what I would call justice. And the next one is titled, They Took Our Parking Spot. Alright, the story begins a few years back. My mom and I made most of the important decisions for the house, which only included us and my brother at the time. And my brother cannot even do his schoolwork, so he got dragged along for the ride. At the time we were deciding where to move as our current place was expensive and bad, and I hated the school district. I voiced this to my mom and we immediately left that district for a lower rent place as my brother did not like the district any more than I did, and all was well. For like the first week, and then our neighbors showed up. Only one really needs a name, so I will refer to him as Roger. And Roger sucked. Our first interaction with him was him parking in our parking space, something that would become a frequent occurrence for him and his friends to do. This was a pretty big issue because the only other parking we could realistically use was 3 blocks away, so this definitely ruined my mom's day when it happened, and watching her mood get ruined by a dick of a neighbor was never lovely. This added up over time, so I decided to retaliate against them, first in a small way. At the time we were still thinking it would stop, so I did something small. I told my friend to park next to our spot and give our neighbors a taste of no parking. This did not end well. Roger parked his car in and immediately threatened him with physical violence. My friend told him he was not local and if he let him out he would be on his way. After I told my mom about this, she insisted that this was the last straw. Our landlord was not doing anything to preserve our parking and our neighbors were threatening us with physical violence. Well, what the hell are we gonna do? I asked my mom. We are gonna run the lease up, she replied, and call some friends. And called some friends we did, overtime, quickly just because they incited our wrath by taking our parking spot. We did anything and everything we could to ruin Roger's life. Anytime we saw him we would just smile and wave. He never knew we were behind any of this. My mom contacted one of her friends who was a sheriff. He mentioned he knew of drugs getting, allegedly, passed around in our neighborhood but did not know who was doing it. He told her if we got enough evidence they could stake out his house to grab more, and eventually that might lead to roping him in. Busting him with a drug dealer? That would be sweet. We would finally have the parking back. So we set out to collect any and every piece of evidence we could. Audio of him screaming? Recorded. We'd smell through the walls? Times and locations written down. People parking in our spots? License plates noted down. I set up a camera to automatically record them coming and going too. We had a thick book of a paper trail on when and what this guy did in his house. About 10 months into this, my mom left me out of the loop. Still not sure why, but as I understand it, my logging of license plates immediately lined up and we found out Roger was the a-hole dealing drugs. Half of the license plates we had noted down had been arrested and searched and drugs were found. The cops were confident now they had their guy and just needed a bit more evidence on him. This all came to a climax after a lease's long suffering. We had never used our parking spot, had walked 5 minutes away just to get in our damn car and had been threatened by and woken up by our neighbor repeatedly. And then, just 4 days before we were to move out, it happened. 6 law enforcement cars swarmed his perimeter, 4 of which were police cars, 2 of which were from Child Protective Services. I saw the door get kicked down, the guy get dragged out in handcuffs, along with his wife and 3 kids removed from the household and driven in the other direction. To this day, nobody except my mom's sheriff friend, who was very grateful, knew of her involvement, and according to him, the guy got quite a few years and won't see those kids again. And sadly, Ripe Stars, we have already reached the end of the video. However, as usual, if you cannot get enough of my videos, I would suggest you to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will show up very soon on the left side of the screen. In addition, please don't forget to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more exclusive Reddit content. Mainly, at least at the moment, just no mother-in-law videos. In addition, guys, I would just like to say we are super close to 50,000 subscribers, so I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel. It would be a dream come true to finally reach 50k. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.